The city of Baltimore does not play about Lamar Jackson, and the city is defending him after a Falcons rookie appears to take a pretty wild shot at Lamar. We talk about that. Marlon Humphrey clearing the air on some Bengals drama, as well as another OTA recap. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, so every Monday through Friday, we have you covered with that daily Ravens coverage. Plus, we go live after every single Ravens game, after every single piece of Ravens big news, and we also have some bonus episodes sometimes on the weekends when the opportunity presents us to talk about a headline here and there. So be sure to tell a friend, tell a family member, and thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle there, thank you to you as well. Man, another week is about to be in the books as the Ravens continue their trudge along to the start of the regular season. It's coming up quicker than I think a lot of people expect it to be. It'll sneak up on us like that, but we have some drama to talk about today. As I say all the time on this show, the NFL is a year-round sport, year-round headlines, and even in some of these lull periods, although OTAs are going on, we got storylines to talk about that. Apparently, a Falcons rookie took a shot at Lamar Jackson, and Ravens fans are letting him hear about it. This fan base, we know that this fan base is passionate about Lamar Jackson, and man, this fan base is certainly letting him hear. So we'll talk about that, as well as get into a conversation about Lamar in the playoffs, because that is where the shot came from, apparently, from this Atlanta Falcons player. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about Marlon Humphrey clearing the air on some Bengals drama and talking about some big Ravens news as it pertains to that. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about OTAs as well, because that's the big storyline, some players stepping up over the course of the first couple of days. So let's dive into this here. Now, I'm still getting up to speed on this story. I think I have a handle on it. Apparently, a Falcons undrafted rookie cornerback, Kobe Bryant, spelled C-O-B-E-E, obviously Kobe Bryant of the Lakers. This is not the same Kobe Bryant. This is Kobe Bryant of the Atlanta Falcons. And apparently Kobe Bryant posted on his Snapchat a couple days ago, is when I think this was posted, just a picture of James Harden in a Lamar Jackson jersey. You know, it's AI and everything. So it's like James Harden, Lamar Jackson on a football field. It's his pads. So James Harden wearing Lamar's jersey pads. He's suited up in that number 8 jersey. And so for those that might not follow the NBA or don't have context on what this means, essentially what that means, James Harden is notorious for being a playoff choker in the NBA. And obviously with Lamar Jackson, his playoff success has, not been up to the standard a lot of people would like it to be here in Baltimore. And he has certainly gotten the wrath nationally, of course, and also locally for that. And look, Lamar deserves playoff criticism, but to compare him to one of, I think, the all-time playoff chokers in the NBA is not fair to Lamar. And my first question here is, like, if this apparent shot here is true, and like, why does Kobe Bryant care or have this opinion on Lamar? Like, I don't understand why this apparently happened, but I don't want to necessarily focus on that part of it. I want to focus more on the playoff conversation, because, we could talk for, I don't want to talk for 10 minutes in the first segment just about, an Atlanta Falcons undrafted rookie. I want to evolve this conversation into more of Lamar in the postseason. So again, it kind of made the rounds on social media over the last couple of days. And apparently this might not even be the first time Kobe Bryant's done something like this with Lamar, which I don't know if that's true or not. So who knows? But just very out of the blue, I guess, with this whole situation. I didn't really know about it until a couple hours before I recorded this show. So, I'm still a little speechless from the whole thing, and, trying to figure out context of everything. Obviously it was on a Snapchat story, so those go away. It's no longer up. But of course, screenshots live on forever, and that's what's been circulating around Ravens social media. But the James Harden comparisons for Lamar are not a new thing, unfortunately. And again, I will be the first to tell you, Lamar's playoff success has not been great. It hasn't been there. He hasn't made the Super Bowl. He's made one AFC championship game over the course of his 7 years in the league. He needs to have more playoff success, right? He has not been a great playoff performer. He has struggled. Sometimes the moment has looked too big for him. But where is this energy for some of these other quarterbacks, right? Where there are a couple of arguments to be made about it where, first of all, Lamar is probably held to a lot higher of a standard. And because of that, he gets more criticism. But my main point is that I think Lamar gets unfairly criticized in a lot of different ways, this being one of it, because first of all, I think that if the NFL worked like the NBA and it was a 7-game series, now obviously for the player's safety, that is never going to happen. Just hypothetically, you put Lamar Jackson out there 7 times, and I think that, most times Lamar Jackson would figure out defenses and he would be a lot better of a playoff performer. Because sometimes, yes, when the moments are bright, you need to be able to step up and perform for the most part. But I don't want, the losses, obviously he has contributed to those losses in certain ways, but we also can't let some of the coaching decisions be swept under the rug here, or the lack of defensive turnovers be swept under the rug. Lamar Jackson has had his part to play. I'm not saying he hasn't, but James Harden, and for those that aren't familiar with the NBA, again, Harden has been known to have a severe points per game drop off. His metrics all go down, points, the elimination games, James Harden doesn't show up. And I'm a Nuggets fan, so I watched James Harden in that Game 7 elimination game, and he didn't make an impact. Where I think even if Lamar's not playing well, he still makes an impact on the game. But yes, these Harden comparisons go back. The earliest I found, honestly, was 2020. And, a lot of people have been saying it. I don't agree with it. I think it is disrespectful. Plus, James Harden is almost a decade older than Lamar Jackson. It's not quite a decade, but James Harden is significantly older, at least in sports age, than Lamar Jackson. Lamar is in his prime. He has entered it. He is in it. And for James Harden, he is not in his prime. And so even when James was in his prime, he wasn't putting up great numbers in the playoffs. And, it's been a struggle for James that way. With Lamar, yeah, he's had big turnovers. He hasn't been able to perform well in certain games. But, then you also have the flip side of that where, hey, Lamar did absolutely destroy the Steelers last year in the wild card round. The year before that, he destroyed the Texans in the divisional round. He beat the Titans back in 2021, 2021, after that disappointing, loss to them in the divisional round. In that divisional loss, he had over 500 total yards. And again, his coaches seem to be holding him back. And there are some of those arguments you can make for James Harden too. But again, it's why are we putting all the blame on Lamar Jackson? And why don't some of these other quarterbacks get this level of, I'll call it disrespect, right? Where, for example, Josh Allen has a lot better playoff stat resume than Lamar. That's not disputable, right? With Josh, you kind of look at Lamar's stats versus Josh's stats, and Josh kind of blows Lamar away in a lot of different categories, playoff-wise. But Josh also hasn't made a Super Bowl, right? It doesn't matter how flashy your stats are. If those stats aren't good enough to get you to the Super Bowl or win one, Josh and Lamar are in the same boat. Doesn't matter who has more touchdowns, yards, interceptions, or whatever. They both have not made the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow does technically have the argument that he made the Super Bowl. Now, they did not win that Super Bowl. So, again, I don't really see how much weight that holds. It is an accomplishment. It is better than what Josh and Lamar have done. But it just feels like everyone holds on to that for Joe. They hold on to the fact that the Bengals were the runner-ups. And, it feels like for the Bills and Josh Allen, oh, man, they were so close. Man, tough game. Josh played really well. Had some tough moments and played really well for the most part. Man, Lamar can't even have 2 bad moments, which he did in that Bills game. He is not excused for those. But while I think Lamar played a huge factor in why they were down in that first half against Buffalo, he was the main reason why they were in it to win it in the second half. He led that drive. Mark obviously drops a 2-point conversion, but it's not just all on Lamar. And the playoff narratives that Lamar has, I think that's why I think the fan base, the Ravens fan base, can get so defensive over it. It's because some of these other quarterbacks, why are they not being held to those standards? While, yes, Lamar is an elite quarterback, one of the best in the league, and as such, there will naturally be more standards. It just feels like some things that lesser quarterbacks get away with, Lamar cannot. And it's not just the difference in elevation of who's better and who's not, and the skill difference and skill gap, where even for some of the guys on that people put on Lamar's level, obviously people talk about Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Lamar as those top 4 quarterbacks. It feels like 3 of them can get away with something and Lamar can do the same thing and he does not get away with it. And that, to me, I think is where the defensiveness comes in from a lot of people who root for Lamar and cover Lamar and try to get that. Like, look, criticism is warranted when it is warranted. But when it's unwarranted and other guys get away with something, it feels different. Where, James Harden also made the finals back with OKC with the Thunder when he was still first coming into the league. And so it's not even I know people compare him to Joel Embiid and this, that, and the other. Like, again, Joel Embiid hasn't made a conference finals. Lamar Jackson has. So these NBA comparisons are just like, really? You just say it. You hate the guy and move on, which I can't understand how people have this mindset about Lamar, where you can be honest about him not being up to the level that he needs to be in the playoffs and also acknowledge that, every time Lamar steps on the football field in the playoffs, it has not been an absolute disaster. He has had good games in the postseason. Now, with the rosters that Lamar has had, with the quarterback Lamar is, not having a Super Bowl with some of these teams is a disappointment. It's a massive disappointment, a massive failure. And again, I'm not using this as, we're going to excuse Lamar for everything. We're not. But there's so much more context than, apparently Kobe Bryant just posting a picture of James Harden in a Lamar Jackson jersey and saying, Lamar and James Harden are the same person. So, again, kind of crazy, that whole thing apparently with the Kobe Bryant picture being posted from him. Who knows if he's going to make the Falcons roster or not. But look, Ravens fans have went on Kobe Bryant's social media and made sure that Kobe Bryant knows that it is not okay to disrespect Lamar Jackson. You can go to his Instagram. There are Ravens fans going in there saying, hey, don't disrespect Lamar. Ravens fans are taking up for Lamar Jackson right now and defending their quarterback. But coming up in the second part of the show, Marlon Humphrey cleared up some Bengals drama from a post he made on social media. So be sure to stay tuned and plenty to talk about on the show. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. And with FanDuel, the NBA playoffs are in full swing right now, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Well, the Knicks, they did it. They made this a series. 3-2, the Knicks beat the Pacers at home. They'll travel back to Indiana to play Game 6 on Saturday night. And right now over on FanDuel, the Pacers are 3.5-point home favorites. So I've been riding with the Pacers all series. I'm still not changing it. I am still going with the Pacers. Now, Tyrese Halliburton had a pretty bad game in Game 5. I think he bounces back, and I think that I'm hammering the over on FanDuel with Tyrese Halliburton, Aaron Nesmith, same thing, and Miles Turner, same thing as well. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this Purple Friday. Appreciate everybody for being here. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend in store as, again, we creep closer and closer to Baltimore Ravens football. Now, I think the really intriguing thing with the Ravens this year is one big storyline. Well, there are multiple, but here's one I'm going to talk about right now. I've talked about it on the show before. No team has ever won the AFC North 3 times in a row. The Ravens will be going for that this season. Everything on paper right now is shaping up for them to do that, although obviously on paper versus on field are two different things. Now, the Bengals have had some drama with the Ravens over the last couple of weeks with the scheduling, and that's something we talked about all last week. If you want to get updated on that. Be sure to go check out the shows from last week. But there was almost, and I say almost because Marlon Humphrey cleared it up, but there was almost some more Bengals-Ravens drama. Now let's get into the news first, and then we'll talk about the drama, where it stemmed from. Malaki Starks officially under contract. Big news for the Ravens, as Malaki was not signed yet, but he is officially, it's pen to paper. The Ravens posted the picture. It's all smiles for him. So Ian Rappaport reporting the terms of the deal. It's a 4-year, $16.6 million deal with an $8.7 million signing bonus. So the Ravens post that picture, right? It's a happy moment for Malaki. He's smiling. Everything is great. Well, Marlon Humphrey then quote tweets this tweet over on Twitter. And he says, contract wasn't signed, but still practicing. And everybody gets up in arms about this, and everybody thinks Marlon Humphrey is talking about Shemar Stewart. If you don't know who Shemar Stewart is, he is the Bengals' first-round draft pick. And why am I talking about the Bengals' first-round draft pick? Well, he is not practicing because his contract is not signed. And the reason, if you don't know a lot about the Bengals are known for being a notoriously cheap organization. He and the Bengals have still not agreed on that contract yet. And it has a lot to do with the injury situation and, guarantees. They don't need to necessarily not practice because they have injury protections, right? That is something that's worked into some of these deals. But Shemar Stewart and Demetrius Knight, those two are not participating in Bengals practices. Now, Demetrius Knight was the Bengals' second-round pick. So everybody thinks that Marlon was taking shots at the Bengals to say, oh, hey, at least Malaki was, practicing when he wasn't signed. And hey, Shemar, hey, Malaki was practicing and he wasn't signed. Why aren't you practicing? That, you haven't signed your deal. Why aren't you practicing yet? And so Marlon, he went back under the tweet. He made sure to clear it up. He didn't want to get in any of that drama. So shout out to Marlon for that. And he said, I actually was taking a shot at agents. Didn't mean no disrespect to the Bengals player y'all are talking about. So really glad that Marlon cleared it up because everybody jumped to conclusions. Multiple people were kind of running away with that storyline. So Marlon decided to clear it up himself. Now, him taking a shot at the agents is a whole different conversation. That's who he said he was actually taking shots at. But the whole Shemar Stewart situation is something that, I don't know. Because, again, everything going on right now with Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati is really bad. It makes the Bengals look terrible. The Shemar Stewart situation makes the Bengals look terrible. The Bengals and Shemar Stewart are at an impasse over the language in his rookie contract. And apparently Cincinnati wants to include a phrase that causes a default in the current year to trigger a default in all remaining years. But past contracts signed by the Bengals first-round picks don't actually include that language in it. So it's a whole mess. So with Malaki and all these other first-round picks, like the Bengals notoriously, I can't stress this enough, and it's unfortunate for the Bengals fan base and everyone who, puts a lot of their time and energy into that team because it feels like the product that the team puts out there every single season, at least most seasons, feels like there are a lot more avenues that they could take to improve the team and they just don't. And honestly, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but for me, it makes me feel very appreciative of being able to cover a team like Baltimore and the Ravens and, growing up, rooting for the team and kind of seeing how they do things. It's rare that an organization is as well run historically as the Ravens have been for so many seasons, and why the Ravens are one of the best run organizations across the league. And that's not just me saying it. It is a fact across not only just how they do things, but the reputation that they have. The Bengals are not even in the same stratosphere as the Ravens in terms of that category. So, look, I don't necessarily blame Shemar Stewart for, holding out and wanting to make sure he is protected against everything. I, feel like if the Bengals are trying to sew a new thing into there, it's not fair to Shemar. like, again, with the injury guarantee or the injury, like, guaranteed waivers and everything like that, the protections, Shamar could practice, but I think it's also for him sort of maybe I don't want other rookies to have to deal with this. So, I'm going to try to get it right. But the NFL never sleeps. There's always something. And if Marlon didn't clarify, I'm sure more and more people, and we'd talk about it, be like, wait, is Marlon taking a shot at the Bengals? Like, is he joking with Malaki? Because we know that Marlon likes to joke on social media, but that Ravens and Bengals rivalry has certainly, gone up with the fire over the last couple of seasons, and the games have been exciting for the most part. And so, you look at the Ravens and Steelers, obviously that is the original rivalry, right? Well, I guess original was Ravens Titans, but I'm talking about the Joe Flacco, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Troy Polamalu, Hines Ward, Ben Roethlisberger, like that. That's like the big rivalry. But feels like the Bengals, I'm not saying it's at the Steelers level, definitely not, even though I think the Steelers rivalry has lost some juice admittedly in recent seasons. But I think the Bengals are one of those teams that, there's always fire when those two teams play. And part of it feels like, whether it be Eli Apple doing his big trust thing after a Bengals win a couple of years ago, or Tyler Boyd posting the Ravens bus out of Cincinnati on the last week of the season a couple of years ago, to some of the moments that the Bengals have had over the Ravens in recent years as well. Feels like that rivalry has juice to it. And me personally, I'm very excited to see those games, particularly the one on Thanksgiving, which, by the way, is in Baltimore. So for anyone in Cincinnati who was wondering, that game is in Baltimore. So the Ravens will have to go to Cincinnati to play on Thursday night next season. But regardless, a lot of drama. A lot of drama today here on the show that we're talking about. But coming up in the final part of the show, we're going to move into some more OTA conversation. We'll talk about some guys that stepped up during the first couple of days of OTAs and a lot more coming up on the show. We're back, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher rounding out the week with you here, talking Ravens football as we always do here, 5 days per week on the show. Never missed a show since 2019. This is episode number 1,520 consecutively for me, dating back to 2019 when I started hosting this show. So excited to keep going here on Locked On Ravens. We've built up such amazing communities, video form, audio form, social media, subtext, the whole 9 yards. So if you are an everydayer, you've been a part of the Locked On Ravens family for a while, of course, I appreciate you. And if you're new to the Locked On Ravens family, welcome in. And if you're still part of the Locked On Ravens family, maybe haven't been here as long as the almost 6 years I've been doing this, but still a staple, right? You've been here for a couple years, maybe a couple months. I appreciate you as well. Appreciate everybody who tunes in, watches, and listens to this show. Now let's talk about Ravens OTAs. First couple of days of OTAs officially in the books. The Ravens will be continuing OTAs over the course of the next couple of days here and couple of weeks, and then that will go right into mandatory minicamp, and then training camp, and then preseason, and then regular season. And we had Qadri Ismail on the show yesterday, who was at OTAs. He's a former Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion, for those that aren't familiar with Qadri. But Q gave us a lot of insights into the Ravens and who looked the part for Baltimore. And I think it's really impressive, to me at least, that the Ravens had the attendance that they did. The attendance that they ended up getting, to me, is huge. Obviously, the guys that did not show up, for those that missed it, Daniel Falele, John Harbaugh said he was dealing with some physical things. Jadobe Awuzie, who was apparently sick. And then you have Kyle Van Noy, and then you have Jake Hummel. So those were your guys. Emory Jones did not practice, but he was there. So that's just some context on that. But I do want to talk about a certain player that did a lot of good things for the Ravens. And Qadri Ismail and I talked about this on the show yesterday. And Q gave us some really good insights as to what this guy actually did. And it is Tez Walker. I'm going to play a clip from Q talking about what he actually did and what he actually showed at Ravens practice on Wednesday, because he really did steal the show, which I'm really impressed with. So we'll play the clip from Q, and then we'll react to it on the other side. Tez Walker, Q, got a lot of praise from a lot of different people. How did Tez look? That's really intriguing to me.
Dude looked fast. Dude looked strong. Dude looked really good. He got to get some electrolytes in him because he did have some little cramping issues on what I think was just, him just running and doing this thing. I think overall, when you look at what Tez brings to the game, it's that explosive speed, very much a contested catch kind of a guy. I mean, it was a corner route in the end zone, and you could see how he's holding off the defender and did really late hands and did a toe touch tap back in the end zone, kind of reminiscent of, although, he was a little bit more wide open against the Giants. But, the DB, I had the roster with me, but I think it might have been either 39 or 37 that was covering him, and he was able to just snatch it, get his feet down, and he looked good.
That was fun. That was the first time I've played a short here on the show. So we're going to be doing a lot more of that moving forward. When we have guests, right, I want to be able to provide context to some of the conversations that we have. So if you missed the episode yesterday, Q and I talked a lot about what his observations were at OTAs, particularly with Tez Walker, Lamar Jackson, and a lot of other guys as well. So be sure you check that out. But I'm really encouraged by what Q and others saw from Tez Walker on Wednesday, because he's someone that, look, I don't expect him to have a huge role on the Ravens this season. But with him, with Tylan Wallace, even LeJohntay Wester, your big three is Zay Flowers, Rashod, Bateman, and DeAndre Hopkins. There's no debate about that. But in my opinion, I think that a guy like Tez Walker, with his speed, contested catchability, and some of the stuff that we did see, it wasn't a lot last season we saw from him. We did see certain flashes here and there. I'm excited about the possibility of him maybe making a bigger impact than some people might anticipate him making this year. So the attendance was great. Lamar Jackson also, he was there and he was looking good. John Harbaugh, he gushed about Lamar, saying that you can tell by the way that he threw the football what kind of shape he's in and how hard he worked this offseason. So that was a big thing. And Jonah Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner officially released his unofficial Lamar Jackson stats for the day, which was 10 of 11 on the day, and looking sharp. Q talked about that with us on yesterday's show as well. So you look at your stars, right? Lamar and some of those guys, and they were all there for the most part, like a Derrick Henry, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, etc. But you also have guys like a DeAndre Hopkins, who, and Ryan Mink wrote some notes from practice over at BaltimoreRavens.com, and Ryan said that DeAndre Hopkins made a very strong first impression. He dove to catch a pass from Lamar, and he made a couple of extended sideline catches with his toe drag, which was really big. So again, having a guy like that on the roster, to me, I think he's a better version of Odell Beckham Jr. I think he's better than Nelson Aguilar. He will be. And it's no disrespect to either of those guys. Those guys came in and did their jobs. I think Odell, the contract, kind of turned people off a little bit from it. But, that's okay. I still think Odell made an impact regardless. Ryan said that Keaton Mitchell had his burst back from, who he was as a rookie before his unfortunate injury. Bo Braid almost made an interception in the back of the end zone. Trenton Simpson, Malaki Starks shut down a wide receiver screen pretty quickly. And for Simpson, he's someone that the Ravens, if he can step up for them, that is absolutely huge. We read off some of the storylines from yesterday and some things that I think are really important to note. Afe Owe put on 20 pounds, and he's going to be looking to use that to his advantage this season. Mark Andrews spoke for the first time in a press conference setting since his Buffalo drop back in January, and talked about how he wants to have a redemption season this year, and was really thankful for the support in his corner. And it was a really tough thing for him to go through, but he was glad to have the people he had in his corner. Talked about leaning on Derrick Henry for some of his offseason workout regimen, which is really cool. And then, you also look at a guy like Ardarius Washington. John Harbaugh giving a pretty crazy injury update on him, saying that Ardarius has told him he's going to be back in November, and the team is, hoping he will be back maybe November, December. Harbaugh adds it's all speculation, but still, tearing your Achilles in May and then coming back in November, that would be a pretty wild recovery. And now he went through a clean tear, so that is the one that heals faster. But even still, Ardarius is apparently a quick healer. We've seen that. but, I just don't want them to rush him back. So OTAs will continue over the course of, again, the next couple of days, couple of weeks, and then it will move directly into mandatory minicamp pretty soon after that. And we'll have you covered here on Locked On Ravens for all of that. That's all I have for you here today on the show. Again, plenty of drama between the Kobe Bryant apparent situation, the Marlon Humphrey situation. Drama is always going to be there, and regardless whether it's drama, news, analysis, updates, there's so much more of this Ravens team. We're going to be here for you on Locked On Ravens. So that's all I have for you here today on the show. On the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for that 5-day week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We'll take a 2-day break here on Locked On Ravens, unless there's a headline. And if there is, we'll talk about it over the weekend. But we'll be back here on Monday, diving into more Ravens content here on the show. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.